Hi, welcome back. It's Laura at Hyperstamper, and I have a super special journal to show you. It's not this one, but wait for it. This is a cover that I look for every time I'm in an antique bookstore or out thrifting, but I do have a book guy who has surprised me with something, and I'm going to show you in a second. This is a 1971 version of My Book House. So there are many publications, the first one being in 1920, the second one being in 1929. So love it. So this is the 1971. I'm going to make a beautiful fairy junk journal out of this one, where everything inside will be antique and vintage fairy ephemera. This one is the same book. They stayed true to the cover. This one is 1960. So also, you know, over 60 years old. The other one was over 50 years old. So they're vintage, but wait for it. This is the oldest one I've had, and I've sold about 3 of the fairy My Book House journals. This is Through Fairy Halls, 1929. So excited. The cover was in such good shape. I was so pleased. I was able to keep it intact, which I'm not always with these ones. It looks like a brand new book, but it is almost 100 years old. So I want to take you on a journey inside. Again, most of the ephemera here is fairy themed, almost all of it. I threw in some other pieces just for interest. I left the cover alone because you cannot beat this. Look at that. We've got elves in here, fairies, a little bit of merman theme. I put a feather down the side just because it reminds me of fairies, and some matching ribbons. I added some lace at the top and some chantilly lace inside hanging over. Let's take a look. I think you're gonna love it. I know these covers sell very quickly for me, so if you miss out on this, because I'm putting it in my Etsy shop momentarily, please note that there are 2 more coming out. The original first pages I kept intact, of course, and because they're just so lovely, I added some nice clusters. And there's the publication date here, 1928. I thought it was 29, even older. This is just a really fun, from another children's book. It's got some elves and fairies on it. Love it. So I turned that into a little flip page, antique paper here. And this is from the I actually might even be from the late 1800s, but look at this fairy on here. It's called The Hero of the Pantomimes, and if you Google that image, it's actually got some good value. So I didn't touch it. So if somebody wanted to rip that out and frame it or copy it, they could. Mushrooms, gotta have that from a vintage plant book, because fairies love their mushrooms, right? And this is from a lovely children's book here, The Little Fairies at Bedtime. I left the story alone, put some pressed flowers there. This is just a gorgeous image here with the little elves down here. Love it so much. I had put a lot of lace and crochet in this one because it's just so pretty. More fairies up here, fairies and elves from a children's book. Look at that. There's another one of those feathers, mushrooms. So I tried to keep everything in the same theme. Up here I made a pocket, and look at this beautiful fairy here. And on the other side we have the elf, and that came from a 1940s children's book. Just put that here for now. I put in this vintage hanky because it had the pretty little flowers, so even though it's not outright fairy themed, it is still stunning. And the tiny stitching in here is incredible, like just incredible. When you see it, if you are the lucky owner of this one, you can appreciate the work that went into making that little teeny tiny hanky. And then this, I just got, it's fantastic, Aunt Martha's Iron-On Transfers. And this is from 1940, and it is literally a book full of iron-on transfers that they would have embroidered on. And I did this one because it has the butterflies, and you can see that this fairy here has butterfly wings. And so I thought that belonged in there. Crochet pocket here, of course. And then I made this little fairy children's book page here. But this, if you Google this, take a picture of that, Google image it, and you'll see that this has quite a bit of value, actually, probably about 20 US. And this is from, I want to say 1912. Oh, sorry, 1928. And it's exquisite. It's a little Italian one because the artist is Italian, well-known Italian artist. Enchanted Land here. This is from the Through Fairy Halls book as well. Look at that beautiful coloring and all the fairies there. Here's another one from another children's storybook, The Fairy Box. Isn't that fun? I guess the fairies visited when little children were sleeping, which I kind of think is very cool. Down here we have an elf on a grasshopper, Chantilly lace. This is stunning. This is from the early 1900s, an antique plate here. So we've got the two plates up here, the wedding of the king and queen of the fairies. And then over here, look at these elves having so much fun over here in the trees. I just love it so much. Vintage crochet book from the 50s. This is from the 70s here, this one. That's sweet. And then I put this antique photograph in here from the 20s because it had the little girl and boy by the garden gate with the trees in the background, just like this. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that they could live together forever. There we go. Hummingbirds. This is another vintage hanky. Probably, just by looking at it, from the 70s, 60s or 70s. And I just thought it was pretty flowery. So I like to put lots of pretty things in fairy journals. And then I've got more pressed flowers here and a peekaboo spot here for journaling. And here, lots of fun clusters down here. This is just a beautiful bird image from an antique book, Fox and Mare. I think birds and fairies go together as well. This is from an old book cover, and I just turned it into a journaling tag. That is a little fairy queen poem here that I left. And this is just a really pretty children's book page that I turned into a journaling spot as well. And over here, this is from the 1800s. Look at this. Isn't that pretty? A fairy kissing a bunny. I love it so much. And I left the story alone because there's also another little fairy poem back here. 1800s. Little antique page here, and this is music from 1910. It was handwritten music, so if somebody knows about music, they could play that. That is a really special piece as well, and that's all mounted on top of a 1930s children's book page. Pegasus. I know it's not a fairy, but it's a horse with wings, so it counts. Another beautiful fairy page image here, and butterflies that I stamped. This is a piece of arborite sampling from the 1940s, and I picked it because it says Yellow Dixie, and I just thought that was a really kind of fun fairyish themed color name. More birds from a vintage bird book down here, vintage dictionary page. This here is just a little book of my antique paper scraps so that you have more places to journal than you could have imagined. And this here is from another children's book from the 1920s, The Lost Shoe. Look at these little teeny tiny fairies. I love how the artist depicted these ones. Look how cute they are. They're just so sweet and innocent. Oh, I'm just in love with that one. This here is a beautiful fairy down here, Slovenia. And then this is a story about fairies from the this is either late 1800s or early 1900s. It would have been, look at the fairies there, so pretty. So a whole fairy story there to enjoy. Embroidery flowers and more embroidered flowers just for their beauty. Another children's book page here with fairies. And then we've got the fairy up here carving a pumpkin. This is a very old page here, so I had to attach it to another page. The fairy ball. And then in here, I've got this beautiful plate from one of the English books that I'm doing a series on now. And I just thought it was a place that fairies would like to live. Isn't that gorgeous? Love it. And this one. Oh yes, just butterflies, because again, I wanted lots of butterflies in this one because of the fairies. Butterfly wings on the front cover, lots of paper in there to journal on as well. This is a 1925 art education book plate, and it is stunning colors for 100 years old. That is for sure. More clusters, vintage page. This is one of my pressed flowers here that I added, and that is on a bookkeeping page, ledger page, and that from the 30s. Just a vintage map, vintage bird study page here, some more vintage paper, and an antique perennials book page, flowers, and bird's nest, and then this lovely little fairy Christmas story page. And then here's another wonderful fairy page here. Can you believe how much fairy ephemera is in this? It's just nuts, right? And it's all authentic, nothing fake, nothing copied. nothing purchased. So here we go. So there you go. Hyperstamper.etsy.com. I hope you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed making it. And thank you to the lucky owner of this book, whoever they may be. I hope you'll let me know how you like it. Come back soon.